Walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall, but you had never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet. Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence, you never fail.
evening. Welcome to our Wednesday night services. We're so glad that you could join us tonight as we continue our series, Becoming the And, specifically talking about race in the church, what we as Christians can do to help make us a more unified and awesome church. God has really blessed us here to be diverse, and we want to continue in that spirit. Tonight we've got a lot planned out for you, but I want to tell you about a couple things. One, make sure you register for Sunday services if you want to be here. Two, this Sunday we hope to be live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and also our church's website. You'll be able to go to our church's website, click on a link, and that's going to take you to singingoaks.online.church, and you'll be able to have a unique group chat experience there that's off of Facebook, that is totally dedicated to us as a church. And you can invite friends, you can share, you can do your online giving, prayer requests, all that kind of stuff will be happening directly from our website. We're excited about that. I'm excited about you getting to join us tonight. Looking forward to our puppet show that we're going to have here in a little bit. Some awesome time of worship. And our discussion tonight where we've invited Clint Polly, one of our elders, to join us. And guys, just so you have a good expectation for tonight, part of what we're trying to do is we're trying to model dialogue when it's a tough situation to talk about. One of the things this world has a problem with is having tough conversations, difficult conversations with love. And as Christians, we're called to love God and love others, not avoid others. We don't want to be about avoiding. We want to be engaging in love. So join us tonight as we become the And. Blessings on you.
Good evening, Singing Oaks. The music that you will hear tonight will be provided by the group that I sing with, Evocal. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some good a cappella music. This is Evocal.
Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is everlasting. He is our God, creator of earth. He will not grow tired or weary, but he increases power and gives strength to the weak. If we wait on the Lord, he will renew our strength. We will mount up with wings like eagles, and we will soar. We will run
Well, I must be on my way. Today's gonna be a long one. I'm off to the temple courts.
The temple courts? I thought you were planning on going to the city gates to meet with the elders. Why are you going to the temple courts?
Well, that was the plan, but I've got to go deal with someone now. Do you remember that Jesus guy? He seems to always be messing everything up for us Jews.
How could I possibly forget? He's a real headache. You're always coming home complaining. Jesus did this, and Jesus did that. He's always making my life difficult.
If you were in my shoes, you'd understand. He's out to get the experts of the law. Today, he's supposed to be in the temple courts, and I've had enough of him. I've got to put an end to this nonsense.
So what's your game plan?
Well, I'm going to have to test him the only way I know how, with the laws of God. I've got to bounce, just in case he's already leaving.
Please, sir, would it be possible for you to spare me some money or food? Anything at all? Please, sir, I'm so hungry. Please help me.
Please, ma'am, would you get your grimy fingers off of me? I am a teacher of the law, whereas you are just an embarrassment to society. I have nothing to say to you, much less anything to spare you.
But, sir, it would really mean so much.
If you don't mind, can we wrap it up here? I've got a previous engagement to expose Jesus. Out of my way. So, Jesus, fancy seeing you here. I just wanted to ask your thoughts on something.
Of course. What is your question?
Well, what might somebody do to inherit eternal life?
Well, you are a teacher of the law, so what does the law say?
The law strictly states that you should love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and you should love your neighbor as yourself.
Right you are, and if you do this, you will live.
Of course I'm right. I'm an expert in the law, for crying out loud. But who exactly is my neighbor?
Okay, my friend. Hear this story. Perhaps there's something even an expert in the law can learn from it. So there was once...
Hey, look! There's a dude coming down the road. See him? Way down there?
Oh yeah, how lucky is that? We've been waiting for a long time for this chance. When he comes by, we'll beat him up and get all of his money.
He looks like he's wearing fancy clothes. I bet he has lots of money on him. This is our lucky day.
Quick, let's go hide behind that big rock over there, and when he comes by, we'll nab him.
Oh boy, I've got to hurry and get down to Jericho. I know this is a risky road, but I've got to get there and take care of my business. Hopefully nothing will happen to me. Hello? Is anybody there? Hello?
Ha!
Ah!
Hey dude, hate to tell you the bad news, but this is not your lucky day. You better give us your money right now or things are not going to go well for you.
I'm not giving you my money. I have to use it for a very important deal. You guys need to get out of here and leave me alone.
No way, buddy. You either give it to us now or else.
Or else what?
Or else you better have some good insurance.
No, stop.
Surprise, surprise. I bet those no-good robbers were Samaritans.
Don't get ahead of yourself. You might just be surprised. So as the man was laying there half dead, a priest and a Levite passed by.
Oh my! What is that? Is that a dead body?
Phew! That was a close one. If I had touched that dead body, I'd have to miss my work for 7 days.
Oh, gross. Look at that dead body. I bet that thing stinks like crazy. Couldn't you have died somewhere else where I didn't almost have to touch you? Ugh.
Right on. Those two are doing it by the book. You definitely don't want to be touching any dead people in our line of work.
Well, there was a third person who came by. He was a Samaritan.
A Samaritan? Are you pulling my phylactery? What's he gonna do? Put the guy out of his misery?
Well,
This road is so scary, and on top of that, it's near Jerusalem, where all those Jews live. I'm so glad I'm a Samaritan and not a Jew. It's bad enough having to go to their city. I mean, they don't even know the right place to worship. Wait, is that a body over there? Oh no, he's bleeding and he's lost his clothes. But I can tell he's a Jew. A Jew? What should I do? Well, he looks dead, but something inside me says I just at least need to double check. Hey, are you okay? Can you speak?
I'm in bad shape. Thank you for stopping. I never expected a Samaritan to stop. But I'm so thankful that you did. I probably would have died if you hadn't stopped.
I have some oil to put on your wounds and some band-aids to patch you up. I know this good innkeeper up the road a ways, and I bet we can get you fixed up in no time. Come on, let me get you on my donkey.
So, initially you asked me who was your neighbor. Let me ask you this. In the story I just told, who do you think was a neighbor to the man who was robbed and attacked? Any idea?
I hate to say it, but it was that third dude. As much as I hate to admit it, he's the only one that actually showed the man any mercy.
Bingo. You need to be a neighbor just like that third dude.
Come on, Geralt. We've got to get home. It's almost dark and the wifey will be worried.
Ha ha ha! I do not know about worrying, but she is going to wonder where your donkey is, because that donkey is about to be mine, and you're about to be toast. Ha ha ha! My donkey, no!
Help me! My donkey!
Are you okay, sir?
Wait, aren't you the beggar who was asking me for money earlier today?
Yes, I am, but don't worry about that. You might not have done anything to earn my help today, but you look like you could use some help. I'm so sorry this has happened to you. I don't have much, but I do have some band-aids to stop your bleeding.
Thank the Lord that you are here. I don't know what I would have done without you. You are such a good Samaritan.
Samaritan?
Oh, yeah. You'd probably never understand.
Hey you guys, me and the Good Samaritan here today. We hope that you learned something about being a good neighbor and how to love other people. I have an amazing song that goes with today's story. Sing with me. Roll the gospel chariot along. Roll the gospel chariot along. Roll the gospel chariot along, and we won't tag along behind. If a sister's in the way, we will stop and pick her up. If a sister's in the way, we will stop and pick her up. If a sister's in the way, we will stop and pick her up, and we won't tag along behind. If a brother's in the way, we will stop and pick him up. If a brother's in the way, we will stop and pick him up. If a brother's in the way, we will stop and pick him up, and we won't tag along behind. If the devil's in the way, we will roll right over him. If the devil's in the way, we will roll right over him. If the devil's in the way, we will roll right over him, and we won't tag along behind. Thanks for joining us today, guys. See y'all next time.
Kids, wait up, wait up, wait up. We have one more number for you, and we think you will know this next song.
Wonder, make way, make way. When it's time you knew the village of Montaigne is all you need. Consider the coconuts, consider its leaves. Part of the coconut, that's all we need. We make our nets from the fibers, water is sweet inside. The leaves to the fires, we cook up the meat inside. The village believes in us. That's right. The village believes. messing around. I killed a Neil, I buried his guts. Sprouted a tree, now you got coconuts. What's the lesson? What is the takeaway? Don't mess with Maui when he's on the breakaway. No tapestry here on my skin. There's a map of the victories I win. Look where I've been, I make everything happen. Look the mini me Maui, tickety tack, tickety 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 tack. Hey, 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 hey.
It's a joy to say you're welcome. And I'm gonna need that bump. You're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you.
That's what you heard.
Good evening, those of you guys watching online with us. If you're a member with us, well, we thank you for tuning in. If you're a guest, we thank you for tuning in. We're continuing our conversation on race in the church and outside of the church and how we can become the and that God calls us to be. And today we have Clint Polly, who is a shepherd here at our church. We have Bo Davis, who is our executive minister and youth minister. And we also have Alexis Johnson, who is a member here at our church. Got it right this week. So we always want to start these conversations off with a word of prayer, and we're going to ask our shepherd, Clint Polly, to start us off in a word of prayer. Amen. Clint, is your mic on?
There you go.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
works.
Yep.
This mic's hot. Woo.
So Clint, we spoke on the phone a couple weeks ago after our elders ministers meeting, and we were just talking about everything that's going on in the country, and we had a great conversation, and so I just want to know right off the bat, what is your take on all of everything that's going on, and where do you think our place is as a church, as the church?
There, and I think things have happened to allow that frustration of that history to start coming out. In one way, a lot of people see it as painful and difficult, but on the flip side, there's a lot of dialogue going on in a lot of my circles, because I have a lot of white circles I hang out in, because we hang out with those we're familiar with typically, and I know in those conversations, in those circles, there's a lot of conversation going on. Different conversation. It's all good stuff. And sadly, sometimes, it's got to get to the point in society where people that are in pain will express themselves, and others need to listen. And I think this is a moment for us to start engaging and listening and participating in conversations we haven't typically had. That's kind of how I view it. Now, as a church, I view this as a huge opportunity for us, especially people like me that are, in the majority in America. All societies will have a majority and a minority, and there's always conflict. But as a Christian, what an opportunity for me to extend love to others who feel either disenfranchised or looked down upon, or they have a thought that everybody's looking at me a certain way, whether it's true or not. A lot of times it is true. Sometimes it may not be true. But if you're caught in that cycle, this is an opportunity for me to break through that and just be vulnerable and real and have a relationship. Relationship breaks all that stuff down. So as a church, I just see it as an opportunity for us to do something new. God's in the business of doing things new and real and honest and raw and redemption, real. I didn't even plan that. But that's my thought. So thanks for asking.
Thank you so much. for being here. Thank you for being willing to be here and to be open and honest. That's what, you guys, that's what this is about. Open dialogue. It's a conversation. And it's not just us four having a conversation. It's us. It's supposed to be us having a conversation and being a representation of the questions that you guys have for this topic. And so every week we try to emphasize that you guys, share some questions, share some thought-provoking questions that will challenge us, because we all need to be challenged. And, I think that the Holy Spirit is a prime example of us being challenged. It's nothing comfortable about the Holy Spirit taking over your lives. When you allow the Holy Spirit to take over your lives, then there's some hard stuff. But God is guiding us when we're talking about hard situations and hard things that we have to endure in life. And so thank you. Thank you for being here. And you guys that are watching right now, please post comments. Alexis, I'm going to give you that job again. Looking at the comments and seeing if anybody has any questions. It's uncomfortable. We know that. But I think that as a church, this is a safe place. Mark said last week, this is a safe place. We are family, right? And so we can be open and honest with each other. So I encourage you to do that. So my next question, it's actually for Clint and Bo too. Okay. So this topic of racism and people feeling like they're treated differently, specifically people of color, more specific than that, black people feeling like they're experiencing racism inside and outside of the church. What do you guys think our place is as the church? Like we've heard, Mark has, for the last few weeks we've had Mark, and he's shared what God calls us to do. But what do you think specifically Singing Oaks Church of Christ? Where do you think we stand as far as this topic, and what are we going to do to continue having these conversations and to make people feel included, because we talk about being the and being a church that, loving God and others. So what are some strides that we're taking to just be more intentional with that and to be a church that allows people that are black to feel like they're included in things that we have to offer at Singing Oaks? That was a big question.
Yeah, I'm trying to track it, but Clint, you want to start?
Some of the things, Mark Atwater is the first thing I can think of. He's our first black elder we've ever had. And I hate having to follow Mark. Mark does such an amazing job, and to me, Mark's an elder's elder, and I'm almost embarrassed to come up here after him because he does such a good job. I really like Mark. But I think that's part of it, having people in leadership that aren't like the rest of the church. Mark's a great leader, And one side of me thinks Mark's a great leader. He happens to be black. So what? He's a great leader. We need him here at this church. But on the flip side, that he is black, that a lot of people, I think that's a positive thing for a lot of people who feel like they are experiencing racism, or they feel like they're experiencing it, and you don't want to have a church that excludes people because of their color of skin. That's not happening here. But something I think we should continue to keep doing is to get out of our comfort zone and to get out of our own little comfort circles and try to make friends with other people. To me, when we have a relationship, or like I have a relationship with you or with Mark, or Nick used to be our song leader here, or Andres, anybody that's not just like me, it expands my horizons. You know, it just makes me, it really makes me, I hate to say this, colorblind to that person. Now, I mentioned that a few Sundays ago about being colorblind. I just see you as Jabari, I see Mark as Mark, I see Bo as Bo. That's what I experience in relationship. Now, at the same time, I have to be cognizant that when you're out in the world, your experience is different than Bo's, you know. And I think there's some power into acknowledging that, you know, and realizing that you getting to where you've been may not be as easy as the white version of you sometimes, sadly to say that, because there is racism out there, you know. But to me, it's all about relationship, you know. When I have a relationship with people, my heart changes. You know, I'm not always who I used to be. Who I used to be is not who I am now. So as I started having a relationship with people that were different than me, my heart started changing. Like when I was a little kid, I'd never seen or met a black person. It was probably till junior high. You know, so my heart was a lot different then. So as I start meeting people, you know, now it hurts to hear a joke about someone because you know somebody now and have a relationship with that person. Like, I don't want to hurt them, you know. And then as you mature over time, you start to change. And I feel like that's a large part of society, but not of all of society, you know. I don't want to ramble off topic too far. So.
Yeah, so if I heard you, I think what you asked was, you know, from your perspective, or from our perspective, what do we think needs to be going on in the church, specifically with, like, what do we need to be doing, or what do we need to be focusing on, or, and that's, you know, as a leader, I can't, you can ask my wife, I dwell on this every day. And I dwell on it from a lot of angles, whether that's women's roles in the church, whether that's racism in the church, sexism, you know. Last night I ran into one of our former members who used to tenure as transgender with my son. And we spent a lot of time talking with that person. And, you know, and I'm kind of trying to gauge from more my son's perspective, who's kind of pure at this point, doesn't have all of the cultural baggage added on to him yet of how to think and where, you know, and, you know, what do you see what do you think? How's that process? And so I think a lot of it, at least for me, in my role, is to look at Jesus and really try to ask that question of, if Jesus was here right now and he was with me right now, what would he be asking me to do? In the middle of pandemic, in the middle of culture, in the middle of you know, we were just a couple of years ago, the whole church was really upset about gay and lesbian marriage because marriage was being redefined. The church was, a few years before that, it just seems like there's always been something my whole life that the church has kind of had a hot button on. And race has not been a hot button topic right now. It's been an ongoing topic because it's so visible. You see me as white, I see you, and I see the color of your skin, right? Jabari asked me this the other day, you know, what do you think about, I don't remember the language specifically, but I think you asked me specifically about not seeing color, basically, and I told you that in the 90s, that's what we were taught. That when I was growing up, it was, you're shallow if all you see is color. If you acknowledge somebody by their skin deepness or by their beauty, right? So if I look at a woman and I only see her because she's beautiful or ugly in my eyes, then I'm pretty shallow. And if I look at you and I only see the color of your skin, well, that's pretty shallow. Or if I look at a woman and see her as a woman physically on the outside, and I don't see her as a person, that's shallow. So I was taught, don't be shallow. Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge somebody by the color of her skin. Well, now, right, I'm being told exactly what? If you don't judge somebody by the color of your skin, you're a racist because you don't take into account the color of their skin and the impact that's had on them in their life. And so it's a struggle. Because on the one hand, I want to be like Jesus and see you as the human you are. regardless of your skin color. On the other hand, I want to recognize the fact that the color of your skin has an impact on you. The language you speak has an impact on you. If you talk with an accent and maybe you're illegal, or, I listen to things that, Andreas has talked about, or some of our other members, and even you guys, the discrimination that goes on, and it's out there, definitely. And as a Christian, I'm like, is my job to try to fix the world's problems, or is my job to preach Jesus and let Jesus change people's hearts? So I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. I have a struggle, I would say.
I think when it comes to, I guess acknowledging someone by the color of their skin, I think there's a way to acknowledge. There's a way to acknowledge it without, you're not necessarily judging them, but there are cultural differences that are just they're in our face. Like it's very apparent that we're different, and so I don't think that acknowledging those differences makes you not. Because I treat people like I try to not treat somebody a different way because of their skin. I was taught that way, and so you saying judging, that means that you're judged because you acknowledge my skin and my experience says that. Says that you're judging me. Well, I don't want to assume that because you're black, your experience is the same as other black people. Right. Because I have been wrong in that. I just assume that because you're black, if other black people have said this is their experience, then that must be you too. Well, why would I assume that, right? Or because you're from Compton, or because you're from California, or because you're from Robinson, Texas, which I drive through all the time. Or because you're older than me, or because you're younger than me, like, you don't know nothing, you're just kids. Like, that's what old people said to me since I was 20. I don't want to do that. Yes, I see it. Yes, it is a factor, but I don't want to assume anything about it. Does that make sense? So, judge may be the wrong word, but assumption. And I would say right now, this is one of the difficulties in church because there's, as I've had conversations with black members, Hispanic members, white members, there's assumptions being made about people because of their skin color, not because of their known. You know what I mean? Like, if I know you, when I hear you talk about something, it's being filtered a different way. If I don't know you when I hear you talking about something, my humanity might kick in and I might assume the negative. I might not hear what you're saying because I'm hearing a word that's charged, or I'm hearing a phrase that's charged. And I don't want to, that's the thing. It's a struggle because I know you guys. I don't know you, right? We didn't grow up together, but I know your heart. I know you care about the church. I know you care about this family and you want to do what's best for the family, and you want to understand the different ways people are viewing race right now, so that you can say, look, I'm not this stereotype, or I'm not that stereotype, but I do have some of these experiences. I do. Like listening to Spring Talk about an eye-opener for me is an eye-opener because that's a woman who saw something as an 8-year-old that I thought would have been something that her grandmother would have saw, not that she would have saw. Because my historical timeline, again, is not, I'm having to go back and go, okay, let's look at the real history of this. We're not 3 or 4 generations out. We are not even a generation out. And in the church right now, I was talking to a couple of the other elder buddies, Clint, and you're one of the younger elders. One of the youngest, but when you were growing up, was the experience the same for you? Did you go to an all-white school and then you went through integration, or was that right after you started?
Yeah, I didn't experience that. Any integration where it was very intentional. Where I grew up, it was mostly all white elementary, And then I got into middle school, then high school. It was even more and more mixed.
But your mom's generation was part of that, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
She was probably part of that.
So I don't know, Jabari. I would say it's just been a struggle. I don't have an answer for it. I think that's part of having these dialogues. It's to kind of talk more about what does that mean for us.
One thing that I'm curious to know, you guys. So obviously you grew up in South Texas.
Yes, sir.
And where did you grow up, Clint?
Duncanville, Texas.
Duncanville, Texas, south of is that south of Dallas? Yeah. Hey, I'm starting to understand. I'm starting to understand my direction when I'm on the freeway. But anyway, so do you guys know someone that practices? This is a straight up question that practices racism. Do you guys know somebody that practices racism, or, was that your environment? Just curious.
I had an uncle. He's still alive. And I hadn't really ever thought about it, but he would always ask me when I would see him, and when I got into my junior high years, he'd say, "You got a girlfriend? Is she white?" And, I mean, his daughter has mixed race kids. Like, it wasn't never, but the fact that he asked the question, right? Or my grandmother told me stories of her growing up, and she's East Texas. She loved everybody, but her language was an older language. She used, instead of saying African American or black, she used the word Negro. That was her word she used all the time to describe people. Never meant a mean thing about it. Was a caretaker for some older black people, even as an old woman, but her language was such from a culture and a time. Now, that was never okay for me to use as a word. But that was something that I would hear her say, and I'd ask my dad about it. And he'd go, "That's how she grew up as a little kid. That was the language. Like for you've been taught to say African American. That's what I was taught to say." So there's some things in there that I don't know that I would say it's racist, but it's definitely language that's being used to describe a world that I see or that I interact with that I would see. But nobody that I ever interacted with as a kid, I never heard anybody degrade anyone because of the color of their skin. I never heard anyone growing up that would, and I had black friends in school, all through school.
Did those black friends, were they allowed at your house?
Yeah, no. We had, there was our school, El Campo High School, where I ended up graduating. If you were to go there today, it's a third. And then there's like a couple of Asians. But growing up, there was one time when I was really little in kindergarten, and I wanted to have Tomas Torres, who was a Hispanic kid, over to my house. Now, my mom, her dad's from Mexico. His name was Enrique Garcia, and he changed it because of discrimination to Henry Smith, because he's white enough to pass. So he changed his name because of racial discrimination against Hispanics at that time. Now, I got told that story. He died when I was 2, so I never interacted with him about it, but I got told that story. But I can remember my mom saying one time, I was inviting Tomas to come over, and she said, "Son, we're not going to have him over because his family's different." And I have yet to go back and ask her what that meant. I don't know if they were, he's told some crazy stories, so it may have been nothing to do with his name, but as a little kid, I was trying to figure out, and she would never tell me. If it was his race or if it was his family was divorced. Turns out I think his stepdad was an abuser, and it may have been more of what was going on. But at the time, as a kid, I thought it was a racial thing. But no, I never heard those things growing up.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Ask me that question again, if you don't mind.
So, growing up, where you grew up and how you grew up, and, you being white, what was your environment like? Did you know someone that practiced racism?
Hopefully a lot of people, sadly, will relate to this. The people I grew up with, definitely, yes, it's racist. Was it overt, what I call, sounds really bad, nice racist? And I'll define this. the people I grew up with would see themselves as nice people, yet they're still being racist. Like they may say jokes and stuff. Would they help someone? Yes. If they were African American, would they give them a job? Would they buy them clothes? Yes. Would they do whatever they could for that person? Yes. But did they also partake in really racist jokes? Yes. I think that was a large block of society when I was a kid, especially Duncanville. It's kind of a rural, a little more rural out there, a lot of cows and stuff, and people would identify themselves and as more country. That's sad though. But did I grow up with people that were overtly racist and like angry and mad and want to go out of their way to hurt someone or tell them something hurtful? No. But is the first one is just as bad? Yeah, it's just as bad, because I think what it is that their hearts are hardened enough to joke about people. And I ultimately think it's because they don't have relationships with other people. Because once you start having a relationship with people, you relate. To know and be known is so powerful. And you can't make fun of people, and most of it is learned and it's culture. Maybe that's a systemic racism, it's passed down. But all those people I know have grown and matured and changed, and their views are very different now. I don't hear any joking ever from any circles I'm in ever now, and I haven't for a long time. But when I look back, I'm embarrassed because I used to really participate in a lot of those jokes. And there was one time that Kenny Shaver, some people may know him, he taught a lesson in my Wednesday night class at someone's home, and I think it was specifically aimed at me. And I emailed him about this a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about racism and stuff, and I really thought, I think this is for me, Sad to say that, but thankfully, Jesus can come in and just break us down and restore our heart and make us someone who can be humble enough and introspective enough to look at other people and love them too, and let go of all that stupid stuff that we hang on to as a kid. And, so in one way, I think all the circles I have been in have changed and grown, but still got a ways to go, And to me, it comes down to love and relationship, especially as a Christian. Am I willing to love everybody? Am I willing to seek out the hurting and have a relationship with them and be known by them? And to me, that's great. That's it. That's good stuff.
I will, now that I'm thinking kind of just more, when I went to my dad's house after their divorce, we grew up going to this Church of Christ in Bay City, and it was primarily white. There was one black elder. There was a few black people that were in the church. I can't remember a single Hispanic person at that church growing up as a kid. But I do remember doing like a door knocking event where we, as a church, we went around to every single house in town, knocking doors and inviting people to church. And I remember getting in a vehicle with this guy named Dennis, who was a lot older than me. He was a white guy. And we went to the black neighborhood, so the black side of town. And there was a black side of town and a white side of town. And I knew from a young age, there's a certain part of town that you don't just go walking through. So I remember being taught that, and it was near where the projects were. It was a much poorer side of town. We drove through it all of the time. But I remember going with Dennis, and we were going door knocking, and we're driving along the street, and in the very back of this neighborhood that I've never been in my entire life. I mean, there's no stores, there's no reason to ever drive back there. But I remember being told, like, that's, we don't go back there, there's a lot of crime and whatnot, and associating that with black people. I remember that. And we stopped at this stop sign, and this guy walks up to us and asks us if we needed something. And Dennis smiles and says, "You don't remember me, do you?" And he's smiling at this guy. He says, "I used to drive the Joy bus that brought you to church." And the guy's like, oh, yeah, you're at that church over there. Well, hey, man, you don't need to be around this part of town. You need to leave. It's not good for you. And I remember thinking, like, wow, like I want to get out and have a conversation right now because I'm that guy. You know me. But as we were leaving, and I can remember my mom being, my dad, like a lot of people just being scared that I was in that part of town. And it was primarily black. Now, racist probably, a lot of crime. I think there's a lot of systematic stuff that's gone on that pushed people into that area generationally. So yeah, there was stuff like that for sure that was going on. But I remember our church trying to figure out how to reach in, but I've been thinking about this as a church. You said something about family the other day, like, you have your culture and your family and the way you like to do things. And, I don't ever remember as a kid going into a black person's house as a kid. There was one particular friend of mine named Brandon who I went to his house to pick him up, but I never went into his house. And I cannot remember, like now you're talking about, like as a kid, ever going into a black person's house. I have no memory of that. And I could be wrong, Mom, if I'm wrong, sorry. But I don't. So that's a part of racial discrimination, I think, for sure. But I don't ever remember being nothing overt about it, kind of like Clint's saying. There's just kind of, and then I do remember racial jokes. But they were told by black, white, Hispanic, and they were about everybody. And they were in the same breath as the A&M and UT jokes that were evil and wrong and disgusting now that I think about them. But they're still there.
So we're going to look at those questions. There's a couple questions that we have, and we'll have Alexis read those off, and then we'll answer them.
So the first one says, Alexis, hi. As a black member of Singing Oaks, what specific action would you like to see taken within and without the church? Okay, within and without the church. So I guess inside, I feel like there could be more of an effort made to include like the black communities in Denton. When I moved here, like I thought about this when I took a class and we went to kind of like the more black side of Denton. And I was like, I've never been here in my life. Like I've never been on this side of town, and why? And I've never seen the church on that side of town either. And I feel like whenever you hear about donating to certain nonprofits and stuff like that, they're always quote unquote the white ones. Like you never see minority focused ones. And so I feel like doing that or donating or making it known that we're donating to a black organization or to a Hispanic organization would really help within the church. Outside of the church, sorry, y'all. I feel like, so I know we're all like do things with love, and like we don't really see like overt racism in the church, but what are you guys like individually doing outside of the church to make it known that you don't think like other people do? Yeah, if that makes sense. So like, when somebody does make a racist joke, are you the one saying like, hey, that's not cool, or are you just sitting there silently? And I feel like there are a lot of people that would call themselves Christians, especially on UNT's campus, that I have never seen like stand up for their black and minority brothers and sisters. And so I feel like outside of the church, that's the stuff that can be taken. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, second question. Oh.
Yeah, second question.
Second question. How many churches of Christ are located here? I don't know. And is there a primarily black congregation? And do we ever have events with them?
So there are, I believe, 6 churches of Christ in Denton. We are by far the largest. I think the next largest one is under 100 people. There is a primarily black congregation here. And for years, most of their kids have come over to our youth group and done stuff together with our youth group. But I think the Denton Church of Christ, which is not far from us, has partnered with them. And to kind of answer that question a little bit, part of what goes on between us and some of the other churches of Christ is true between us and the primarily black one. there are some conservative, religiously conservative, not politically, religiously conservative things like having a woman on stage that doesn't bode well with other churches of Christ. And so to whoever asked that question, we want to be a loving group to any church, and we partner with all sorts of churches. We do things that other churches of Christ get mad at us about, like partnering with Our Daily Bread, which is a Presbyterian group. We've done some other partnerships over the years that other groups, and so I would say, yes, we made attempts. We could probably make attempts again, but some of it is just, it has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with Church of Christ doctrine. Is that, yeah.
Also, real fast. Oh, I just wanted to comment back to you on your, like, quote unquote, nice racism
Yeah, I knew
thing.
that was going to come back.
Well, okay, here's the thing. This is what I think. So I just feel like it's very dangerous. A lot of people get comfortable with like the, oh, well, my grandma's not overtly racist. She's just, sometimes she says things that are like off color. And I feel like the problem with that is we get comfortable with that. And so you grow up in that environment, and when you hear that, then you don't take a stand whenever something is said. And so, and you also kind of do that to your kids as well. And so I feel like making a stand and like saying like, hey, that's not cool, and correcting them. The excuse that I hate this excuse, strong word, but I hate it, is, oh, well, they're old. Oh, it's a different time. Well, you can always learn. Like, I feel like.
My grandma died, so I can't adjust it anymore.
Well, not your
I'm just
grandma,
saying.
but just in general, I just think it's a silly excuse because do our brains just stop working once we get to a certain age and they can no longer take in new information? And I feel like if Jesus were here, would he really be like, oh, well, you're 90 years old, so like it's too late for you to change
Right.
and like be accepted?
Right.
So yeah, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think, especially my point was kids. I don't want my kids, and Amy and I
Right.
we're pretty conscious about that, and especially if that happened. Honestly, if we didn't confront that person, let's say it was our great-grandmother, which that hasn't happened, but it was somebody, what we would do is have a big talk in the car as soon as we got in there, But I think saying something about it right then is not just good for that person, but it's really good for ourselves as a parent. And it's especially good for our kids, because I don't want my kids at all growing up with a narrative that's really going to hurt other people and embarrass them. That's my experience, and I want to raise my kids totally different, which I think we are, My middle son's first girlfriend is African American. Actually, I don't think he's ever dated a white girl. I'm not going to throw him under the bus, but that's okay, And I'm not trying to say I'm some, social justice person, which I'm not. But I want to raise my kids to be loving and kind and respectful to other people, and it begins at home, like Mark said. That's where it begins. That's where racism really ends, I think, is at home,
Yeah, and I would say that, like, to say something to my grandmother would have got me slapped. So there was this kind of, like, fear of respect as a kid. Now, as an adult now, that would, if she was alive, I did go toe-to-toe with her on some stuff. I didn't win, but that's okay. I still, like what you're saying, respect that. As a little kid, that would not have been appropriate, but it is obviously appropriate today. But what I would say, like what Clint's saying, like with my kids, like I'm thinking about my kids. Am I somebody that my kids could challenge in that? Do I have a heart that would say, like if Tice looked at me and said, Dad, why did you do that? Would I be like, you're right, son, that was racist, or that was sexist, or that was whatever ist, But I am like with Clint, kind of watching some of these older teens going, how do I talk to my kid? And I've talked to you guys about this before, but, I had the blessing of when Nick was here, we had kids the same age. So they're always playing together. They're at our house. We're at their house. Or, there's this, and I'm have conversation with Bathsheba, conversation with Nick, and they're talking to their kids about what life's going to look like for them in a different way than I'm talking to my kids about what life's going to look like for them. And we're having dialogue as Nick and I are like brothers going, okay, we keep having dialogue because Tice can't understand why little Nick might be treated different. I don't know that little Nick could understand why Tice might not be treated different. I don't know how to have those conversations in a way that doesn't perpetuate a narrative that says, hey, be careful. You're more privileged, and you may not know you're being a bully, or you may not know you're I don't know how to do that quite yet. I got the oldest one. By the time I get to Sky, maybe I'll have that figured out. But, part of it is for me, like, I love the community around Denton is so eclectic. I mean, like, you're my daughter's teacher right now. I love that you're my daughter's teacher right now. And my daughter had rung, and my kids are growing up in a environment where there are kids of different color in their church environment. And so my hope is that when they get older and they go out, they'll run into a church and it's all white and they'll go, something's wrong here. Well, yeah. I mean, we're in the neighborhood that I live in, right? I mean, there's black kids and Hispanic kids and white, and they're all playing with each other, and I love that. I don't know that fixes a problem. I just don't think it perpetuates one. And I don't know. I don't have an answer. I am guarding that, trying to watch that. And then, like for our church, like that's one of the things I love about this church. Like, it isn't that we invited you guys from another church to come over to our church, or you invited us to your church, because we're in the same church. And we're able to have these dialogues, and maybe that's the solution. Maybe the solution's our generation's sacrifice for the next one. Maybe it's our hard work that's going to have our kids not have to deal with what we deal with. That's my hope. That's a lifelong journey. That's not a Wednesday night, one conversation fix. Yeah, but it's like 7:15. So, yeah, we got some time. Yeah.
Okay, just trying to make sure. So this question is for you, Clint. This probably will be our. Is there another question on there?
I'm going to check our other website because we have multiple sites we're streaming to.
Look
now.
at God.
I'm telling you.
All right. So Clint, Clint, one of your few couple weeks ago, you did your pastoral prayer at the end of service, and I thought it was powerful and it was challenging, and it challenged me. It challenged my thinking, and you basically said something to the thought of not necessarily understanding someone that is black that is experiencing racism, or the black experience here in America. And you said, getting to know, I can't remember exactly what you said, but would you elaborate on, do you remember what you said?
Kind of vaguely. So I think what I was saying was talking about the story of the Good Samaritan and seeing that brother on the side of the road that's hurting. And I can choose to walk by as the priest, and as a white person, I could walk by, not address seeing someone in pain, and live my life and not be affected. That's being like the priest or the Levite, or I could be like the Samaritan and choose to love the person I see hurting, which is what I think Jesus is wanting to tell us, is like, as Christians, we should, if we don't have the heart to automatically respond, to choose to reach out to the person that's hurting, we need to check ourselves. Think, why don't I feel that way? And I need to really think, what is my relationship with Christ like? So to me, it's a challenge, and it was something I had been thinking about for a week or so before communion, and I just felt like God put that on my heart in that verse, and I thought, what's it like to be the priest? And then I see all that's going on. Facebook is a disaster of comments. But you have a lot of people, you have statues coming down, you have riots, you have all this. This is what pain looks like. This is pain coming out of people from their experience. How do I view that in context of being a Christian, being a white person in society? What's my part, And I think just the least of what I should at least do is be able to get to a place out of my heart and my head of this old narrative that's, well, everybody's the way they are because of the way they are, and saying, you know, just because I treat someone kindly and respect doesn't mean everybody does. And start having that dialogue with other people and starting to say, not everybody treats everybody with respect. And I think just having that dialogue out there, I've had so many conversations about this in the last few months or since all this started. I think it's good. I think dialogue's good. I think acknowledging that other people are hurting is powerful. And then the next step is, well, how can I help my brother that's hurting? You know, what's that look like? And then try to figure that out. And if I have the heart of Christ, I'm going to figure it out. I'll see the opportunity. Maybe God gives me that opportunity. Maybe I can't see it, but he can, and he'll show me. And then I'll act. And that's being Christ, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Can I add to that too? Yeah. All right, so let's keep it real, right? So I'm just going to say, like, when he stood up here and said that on Sunday, my thought was, yes, stop and help the hurting. Absolutely. Put the guy up, took him to the hotel, paid for him, left, came back and checked on him, you know, that kind of thing. And I look at that and I go, that's the story Jesus tells. In the story, Jesus isn't living that story. He's telling the story, but he's telling it to a group of people with the question of who's the better person, who is the holy person, who is the loving person at the end, right? And I listen to that and I go, okay, he didn't go attack that priest and say, you are an idiot, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't have walked by. He didn't go to the other person and say, you shouldn't walk by that. The Samaritan didn't go chase down the robbers and beat the snot out of them and bring justice to them for beating up the guy on the ground. He didn't go to the Romans and say, hey, y'all need to put patrols out here and stop this injustice from ever happening. He never did any of that in his story. Now, there's other stories. But I listen to that story and I go, in that story, Jesus is praising the person who sacrifices their own life to help that person who's hurting, downtrodden, who's been beaten up, but not eradicating what caused that. He didn't go to that next level in the story. And so I hear that story and I go, okay, in that story, my call is to help the hurt. Is the story to go find justice for that hurting person or to love that hurting person? And I'm not saying it isn't. I'm saying that's where my brain goes, and I have that conversation with myself. What is my role as a pastor? What is my role as a Christian? Or am I so busy trying to fix problems that I'm not even stopping to help the hurting? Am I so busy trying to, and my wife will tell you this, I'm online sometimes, I'm looking for global solutions. I'm looking for big solutions. But I may just have gone through a thread where somebody's hurting and not just said, hey, I know you're hurting right now. I may not understand, but I love you. I just want you to know that I love you. I'm not. And I have to remember, like, for me, like, when you said that, that's what I was like, okay, next time on Facebook, I have got to make positive comments to hurting people. I cannot challenge every hurting person I see, nor can I try to go fix every person out there who's trying to hurt others. I've got to stop and make sure I'm at least addressing the guy in the ditch at the moment. Does that make sense?
Can I say one thing? I promised my wife I wouldn't say this, so Amy, I'm going to say it anyway. So, and this is where I think a lot of people that want the same thing are coming at different directions. And there was a Facebook post recently, and it was from a woman that I know her and I know she loves everybody. And she posted something about, I can't support Black Lives Matter because Black Lives Matter, I guess the organization or something, I don't know. They support something else and something else. So she posted that up there. And I was like, but I know her and I know what she's trying to say, but you could, maybe you could easily also say, oh, like that hurts. Like she doesn't support Black Lives Matter. She doesn't support Do We Matter? Do we matter as a black society? Do we matter? Because we feel like we're getting oppressed. We feel like people are putting their knees on our neck. We're dying. we're not being treated through the correct process or whatever, respect, dignity. But on Facebook, it's just so bad. It's so bad. I think if everybody should do one thing, get off Facebook and have relationships with people outside the computer. Have real relationships with real people. Because you try to explain your narrative against their narrative,
It ain't gonna matter.
they're not going to be interpreted correctly. They're going to be hurtful. And at the end of the day, I need to be looking to love people that are hurting. If they're saying, hey, we're hurting, I don't need to educate you. I need to love on you. You know, I don't need to say, well, you're hurting because of this and this and this. No one wants to hear that. You know, I'm hurting. You know, help me.
Right.
And that goes back to your question of, you know, when someone says, I don't see color, you're missing an opportunity. When you say I don't see color, you're missing an opportunity to really get to know someone and to walk with your brother or your sister. Just see if don't judge them because of their color, but walk with them and have these dialogues. This dialogue really, really, really helps. And I know that as a black man, and I don't know about you, I'm just speak for me.
Wise black man.
You know, it's brought me more comfort just having these dialogues, you know, at a place where I'm the only black minister. I love it here. I love Singing Oaks, and I love serving God and serving people, and I love, you know, making disciples. But, you know, having these dialogues, the fact that you guys are willing to have these dialogues and just listen. And I'm glad that we have been able to stay on the island. That's, you know, there's lots of things going on in the world right now, but, you know, right now we're talking about race. And I think that, and I thank you guys for watching, but I think that we're growing together. And so I want to close us out in a word of prayer. And then we're going to be done for tonight, and we'll see you this Sunday. Most gracious and heavenly Father, we thank you for an environment where we can speak openly and challenge each other so that we can be more like you. God, we thank you for everyone on this stage and their contribution to the kingdom and the contribution to society. God, I ask that you would continue to open our hearts and open our minds to things that challenge us so that we can be better for you and better serve you. God, we thank you and we praise you, and we say this with assurance. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Good night.